Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation entitled The Ultimate Email Acquisition Marketing Webinar. I'm Chris Johnson, Content Director at Performance In, and we're thrilled to have teamed up with Natomi Group, who will be presenting today's webinar to you. Firstly, some housekeeping. The presentation part of the email marketing webinar is going to take around 25 minutes. Following that, we will spend around 5 to 10 minutes asking any questions that you may like to pose to our presenter. We're encouraging you to put forward your questions for Natomi via the chat option in the webinar platform. We'll be picking these up throughout and we'll pose a number of questions to our presenter at the end of the presentation. The webinar is also being recorded and will be made available to all registrants post-event. That leads me on nicely to the introduction of our presenter for today. Christina Diederich has 8 years of experience in digital advertising with a focus on email and manages the North American Client Strategy and Operations Department at Natomi Media Group. So without further ado, over to you, Christina.
Thank you so much, Chris, and hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here today and talk a little bit about email. Before we start, if there are any technical problems, now is the time to tell me. So I hope you can all hear me well. And you're now seeing the slide with the runner about to start his race. If not, just type in an X and we'll help you out. All right. Let's talk about email today. What's the current status? How has it developed over the years? And, has anything changed in 2015? I will talk about the two major acquisition models, CPM and CPA. And what are the pros and the cons? What challenges are we seeing and what advantages are we seeing? But also, how should you manage your email acquisition campaign in order to achieve the results you're really looking for? Also, my colleague, Daryl Caldwell, just published an email acquisition guide, and I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into a few of the points that are mentioned there. And then finally, I'm happy to answer any of the questions that you might have. So, all right, let's jump right in. First, let me tell you a little bit about Natomi. Natomi was founded in Tel Aviv in 2007 and has since developed to one of the largest digital performance marketing companies worldwide, serving a variety of digital media channels. You can see some numbers on the slide. We have 430 employees who are spread across offices in the UK, Germany, Spain, Mexico, the US, and Canada. Natomi went public on the London Stock Exchange last summer, and we then built a strategic partnership with Publicis just a few months after. So the state of the email acquisition marketing today. One thing that I would like to say right away is that those Wild West days of email are definitely over. Email acquisition marketing has become a very professional business, and it requires a lot of expertise nowadays. A few years ago, there was a massive shakeup across the email industry over the last several years. Deliverability has become more and more challenging. Mailers have to have extremely strong relationships with ISPs in order to assure consistent inboxing. Here, compliance comes into play as well as complaint rates. A mailer who has slightly higher complaint rates or bounce rates than average has no chance of building strong relationships with major internet service providers. Many mailers have actually gone out of business for these factors. So data integrity and quality are so important nowadays. Good data that's not on a ton of different lists. Another aspect that's changed when it comes to how acquisition emails are sent is the pricing model. In the past, advertisers would pay for email campaigns almost exclusively on a performance basis. That's definitely changed. The marketplace became smaller, the demand higher, and the quality improved as well, which led to mailers kind of requiring to be paid on a CPM. So in the future, advertisers must consider CPM email for their media mix. I would like to make this a little bit interactive and, kind of learn a little bit about you as well. So this is a poll. If you're, in front of your laptop or computer with the ability to click, please do and take part in this little poll for me. My first question is, are you already running email acquisition marketing campaigns? Wow, I'm seeing the votes come in. Awesome. Thank you very much. I'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, great. So I'm seeing that most of you actually have done that before. That's good. So now I know who I'm talking to. My second question is, do you manage your own campaigns or do you work with an agency? Give you 5 more seconds. Okay, so we can see that a lot of you are actually managing your campaigns by yourself. Great. All right, perfect. Thank you so much. When it comes to the challenges, I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. As I just mentioned, it's become harder and harder for marketers and emailers to deliver their emails. You know, we all heard about the acquisition that just happened. AOL is definitely becoming a slow burn and very hard to inbox. Hotmail is now a challenge. I know that a lot of people here today are located in Europe. You know, Hotmail UK is a challenge for sure. Yahoo is always tricky. Gmail is almost impossible to figure out. Nowadays, you really need a team of experts dedicated to an email marketing campaign. You can't really mail yourself that easily anymore. Data needs to be scouted and it needs to be cleansed and deliverability needs to be monitored and adjusted constantly. ISPs change their algorithms so frequently, and you need to be prepared and figure out resolutions quickly. I personally don't expect the main challenges to ease up in 2015. All right, so let's dive a little bit more into the two pricing models. The advantages of CPM. When pricing an email on a CPM, an email campaign on a CPM, you pay per 1,000 emails delivered. This gives you a few advantages, actually. First of all, higher control, a higher level of control. You choose the drop date. You choose the volume you want your campaign to be mailed to. And you're able to reach a specific demographic or geos because you're able to target. Also, mailers will provide you with detailed reporting, about 72 hours after the drop, which is something you don't usually get with a performance-based campaign. You also have access to more data partners because not every mailer works on a CPA. Also, something that's crucial for the success of your campaign is A/B split testing, which is more likely to be tested in a true environment if it's booked on a CPM. So let's talk about the challenges with CPM for a little bit. So there's certainly a level of uncertainty. You pay for 1,000 emails delivered. That's a much earlier action in the funnel. So there's an upfront risk that you're taking. So more planning is required. You have to know your backend metrics, of course, and you also have to start with a small test to determine if a larger scale campaign will be profitable for you. So be sure that you have some time for testing before you go big. Also, talking about, scheduling challenges, they will definitely happen around major holidays. If you know you want to deploy your campaign on a certain date, that's great, but there's only so much data, out there. So you need to plan ahead. Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, 4th of July. Sometimes these dates are booked out weeks in advance, so be sure to schedule deploys in advance. For example, if you're a dating advertiser and you don't have a Valentine's Day themed email creative out there by, let's say, January 15th, you're losing out. Or if you're a university or you have a dieting product, if you don't get your New Year's resolutions email out on January 1st, you're also losing out. So think about it. Users want to be addressed in a way that they can emotionally relate to your campaign. That's when they click and that's when they convert. So these dates are extremely important. When it comes to CPA, it's a little bit of a different game. Actually, it's a totally different game. There's definitely less risk for an advertiser than with a CPM email buy. Buying email on a CPA basis often already ensures an ROI positive campaign from the start. Now, why is that? Because you're paying for each lead, so each potential customer, that's much further down the marketing funnel. You already know that your users are interested in your product, which is definitely an advantage. It's less pressure on you. It's perfect for certain verticals, like dating would be a good example. It tends to perform very well on weekends. eCPMs are sometimes even higher than standard CPM rates would be for mailers. That means that mailing on a CPA basis is actually more profitable than mailing on a CPM. This means that you're automatically getting high volumes for your dating campaign. The cons, challenges, again, you have less control, you have less certainty. Is your campaign going out tomorrow or is it not? You can never be sure. When you're buying on a performance basis, mailers will mail whatever makes them the most money. It's that simple. That's why performance works well for widely popular verticals, insurance or other finance-related products, and also well-branded products. The more you restrict, the less volume you'll receive. So if your product is very niche, it will be a little bit harder to get it to convert on a CPA. So, it's more broad targeting. You pay for the lead or the action. That means that mailers don't always put in the effort to target. Okay, so now let's talk about strategy when it comes to email a little bit. What do you need to keep in mind? So in my opinion, when it comes to an email marketing campaign, you should consolidate your marketing partners. You should probably work with a few, 1, 2, maybe 3. That way you can really minimize pitfalls. You have to take care of so many things as an advertiser: the creative, the suppression file, list duplication, footer updates. There's just so much to be on top of. If you work with too many partners, you might lose oversight. Also work with a partner who has internal media. For example, here at Natomi, we mail around 10 million records a day. So that gives us a ton of knowledge. We know what's working, we know what's not working. So whenever we leverage outside sources, we can already tell them, use this subject line because it's going to open better, or use this creative because it's going to click much better than the other one. That gives us a lot of power to optimize very quickly. And that brings me to another point, which is volume. You really need to ensure that your partner can scale. Because if you work on a campaign for a long time and you optimize over time, and then you really want to go big and the partner says, oh, sorry, that was actually it, that would be a challenge. Also, mix it up, include both CPM and CPL into your buys. Don't be afraid of CPM. If you have a good partner, you will work towards a CPA goal in order to assure a positive ROI. It's not only that your partner is going to guarantee delivery, he will work towards a performance goal. Also, be flexible. It's about testing and learning what's right for you. Certain partners work on a CPM, certain partners work on a CPL. So you don't want to exclude partners just because you're afraid of CPM. Manage your sources. So you need to understand your partner's data. You need to be able to track by list or source ID. That gives you the chance to remove underperforming lists and shift budgets towards performing lists, which is extremely important for optimization. You also need to have weekly check-ins with your mailer. Be involved, listen to them, listen to what's important to them. And I'm going back to the seasonality, for example. When they ask you, do you have something for Mother's Day? Do it. Get something designed, or have your mailer design something for you. It's extremely important to keep in constant communication with your partners. Something that always comes up, obviously, is compliance. You need to be absolutely sure that you're mailing 100% compliantly. I know we have people here from across the globe. So here in the US, it's a little bit different. We have canned spam. There are the EU regulations, but partner with a compliance monitoring company to make sure that traffic is watched 24/7. There are compliance tools like Flashback, OmniAngle, PerformLine that are connected to ISPs, and they monitor what's being mailed. This is extremely helpful for you to stay on top of what's going out. Also, I think it's really important to make sure that your marketing partner has a compliance team looking out for your best interests too. If your mailer does not have a compliance person or a compliance team, that's definitely a red flag. So also draft partnership agreements, put thorough contracts in place. In the worst case scenario, how are you going to handle the situation? So really make sure that you're covered. So in the last few minutes of this webinar, I'd like to talk about an area that's really important when it comes to successful email acquisition campaign, and it's the creative side of things. It's also part of the email acquisition guide that I just mentioned earlier. And sure, we really need to talk about mobile. 60 to 80% of users open their emails on mobile devices, which means obviously that your campaign needs to be mobile optimized. You need responsive creatives, you need responsive or mobile landing pages and mobile flows. And if your campaign is connected to a call center on the back end, definitely have a click-to-call functionality. The most important thing to consider is that your offer needs to have a clean and simple design that's properly formatted. And you need to make sure that your creative is rendering correctly on mobile devices. So, QAing everything 1,000 times before it goes live is very important too. Especially that now that mobile is becoming so big, testing on different mobile devices, very, very important. Here you can see like one of our mobile rendering creatives. It's a little bit more of an additional design and tech effort, but it's absolutely worth it. And a lot of the vendors and partners that you work with can do it for you. So how important are creative assets? And when I'm talking about creative assets, I'm not only talking about the email creative itself. I'm also talking about the subject lines and how important it is to analyze them. On average, users receive around 416 commercial messages a month. And, for some it's less, for a lot it's much more. Obviously, that's the average. So you need to stand out. So an example, just last week, we increased the open rate of one of our campaigns by 200%. We made the subject line much shorter because keep in mind the majority of users are opening their emails on mobile devices, so you want them to be short and crisp. We also changed up a few keywords and we added some time sensitivity like only this week or call today and get. We didn't change the actual email creative at all. And this simple change alone increased the eCPM of our campaign to an extent that it was now in our top 7, which means that it goes into rotation and it just receives a ton of daily volumes. So a little tweak can make a huge difference. Just want to talk about just a few examples of email creatives and how that can make a difference if you put a little bit of knowledge and effort into it. So maybe I don't really want to call it bad example. There's a good image for a life insurance campaign, but one thing to consider is trigger words. So oftentimes words like life insurance, for example, could be a trigger word for an ISP that would lead to the ISP blocking the creative from being delivered. Some words like free, obviously, or promotion could be trigger words that add or don't help you get into the inbox. It will block you. So in this example, they are in text format. So the ISP is actually able to detect them, which is not good. Also, there's a lot of content on the site. People don't have a lot of time, and especially for promotional email, give it 2 seconds for a user to think about whether they're interested or not. So there's definitely too much content. You should be crisp and get to the point. Also, the email creative is very long. So when you think about your inbox and what it would look like, the call to action would actually be very far down. So users would have to scroll down in order to see what they're actually supposed to do. And then finally, click here. It's kind of something that used to work and be necessary about 15 years ago to kind of show users that they're actually supposed to click on a call to action. We all know that nowadays, so use the space to tell them what to do and give them an additional incentive. So here we kind of see a better version of the creative. The spam words are an image format, so they can't be detected by the ISP. Also, there is the header above the creative, which you can see right here, which means that if the creative doesn't load, they still see something that they are, that they should click on, which really helps. And then also the call to action is bold and it gives some content. It says, get a free quote. So this actually means something to the user. Also, it's above the fold, so they see it immediately. And last but not least, you have a compliant footer at the bottom, which is absolutely crucial. Whenever a mailer sends you a seed email, a test email before launch, make sure that there's a footer at the bottom as well. And I think this is it. So yeah, thank you for attending to any questions. I'd be happy to answer them now.
Thanks, Christina, for that presentation. Yeah, we've got a few questions that have come in, but I wanted to ask one initially, and you talked about the CPM versus CPA ratio. I'd be interested to know from Natomi what sort of ratio you're seeing for that.
Yeah, good question. So at the moment, it is about 50-50 actually, which is a more recent change. I think about 2 years ago, about 70 to 80% of what we did was performance-based, so it would be on a CPA. But CPM definitely has and become a bigger method for us. Just because you have some advantages with us that I just mentioned. You're able to target, you're able to have specific drop dates and volumes that you can just very much rely on as an advertiser, which really helps you to make sure you get out of your campaign.
And I guess following on from that, what is, in terms of advertisers, what is it that they really want to get out of an email marketing campaign? What are the big trends or the most common desirables from them?
Well, I think it really depends. Here at Natomi, we mostly work towards the leads. So a lot of what we do is life insurance, for example, where we get users to submit their information in order to receive a quote or receive more information on a product and then eventually turn into a sale. Of course, here, what marketers want to get out of it, or advertisers want to get out of it, is the sale. So, no matter if you work on a CPA or you work on a CPM as an emailer, you have to make sure that you know the advertiser's back-end goals and work towards them. So, that's very important no matter which method you pick.
And I think we've had a question in from there. What brands could you mention that maybe you work with that are doing this very well at the moment?
Oh yeah, one of the brands we work with is MetLife, for example. They are, obviously we all know, a life insurance, a top Fortune 50 life insurance company, and with them we work closely when it comes to the back-end metrics. So we started, with one method and then went into the next, and kind of over time found the perfect mix of the two different models and are now working very well together. And here again, I think that the constant communication is crucial. You need to be able to have daily calls when you have big budgets in order to make sure that you're always on track and that you get daily reporting from the advertiser to see what's going on the back end, how many users are actually applying for a life insurance campaign and how many are in the end converting into a policy. So all of this information is definitely crucial to receive back.
Okay, we noticed that the Direct Marketing Association this year released a figure that was saying how research is pointing to a rise in ROI from email during 2014. Do you think that's down to marketers getting smarter or the technology getting better? What would you put that down to?
That's a good question. I think it's certainly a mix of both. Technology helps us to understand the user better. It helps us to target offers more towards the individual's needs. It helps us to append data from other media channels even to a user ID. We're now able to retarget through different platforms. Technology also creates better cleansing processes for new data, which lifts quality on the front end and performance on the back end. So I think technology is a big aspect when it comes to increasing ROI, but marketers definitely also have become savvier. They know their back-end metrics and they know their goals. They ask a lot of questions. They A/B split test. They target very smartly based on the technology. So, they have analytics in place. I think that both sides are true.
Okay, and we've had one final question come in as well, talking about testing email across different devices and platforms. The company that was mentioned there was Litmus, allowing you to see tests across these. But is there anything else, any other sort of tips or pointers in terms of looking at email campaigns across different devices and platforms?
Well, the testing, I think you should never go live and really blast out a campaign if you haven't tested it across the board. I think only once you've QA'd on all different devices, and we actually have them here, so before we go live, we test on different devices to make sure that it's actually happening. So if you as an advertiser work with a partner, they should also provide the service to you. We create our own rendering email creatives for our advertisers just because we see that it's such an uptick in conversion rates. So we do it at no cost because it's just in the end, it kind of helps everyone to be more profitable. So we have this in place, but Litmus definitely helps, yes, to do that as well.
Great. Well, that seems to conclude, I think, today's webinar. Obviously, don't forget that it's been recorded and it will be made available to all registrants shortly, so watch out for that in your email. Our thanks to you, Christina, from Natomi, for sharing with us the insights into that email acquisition market. So, until next time, thanks very much.